Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride On Motorcycle Podcast, sponsored by Break Free. And today, in this episode, we're going to have Dave from Canyon Chasers coming on. He has an exceptional YouTube channel that gives everyday riders like you and I some tips while we're to ride well in the Twisties. Can't wait to bring him on. And in my opinion, the best part about being on a motorcycle is riding in the Twisties. So we're going to bring him on here in just a second. But before we do that, I have a couple quick announcements. As I said in the intro here, this episode is sponsored by Brake Free, and if you don't know what that is, it's a little brake light that goes on the back of your helmet and works as a brake light. It's absolutely awesome. We're going to give you a little more info on that in a little bit here. So my next announcement is on July 15th. The Belleville Biker and I are going to be holding a non-formal practice session from 9 to 3 in Belleville, Michigan. We're going to get out in the parking lot, set up some cones, do some slow speed maneuvers, and just have a great time. And then this leads me into my last announcement here. If you want to get more information on this practice session, go to my Facebook group page, go into Facebook, type in Jogo Motorcycle Adventures, and join the group. I've already created the event in there, so I'll be posting updates as they come. So, all right, with all that out of the way, let's bring in Dave from Canyon Chasers. Roll the intro.
How are you?
Not too bad. I appreciate you coming in here. Let's see who we got watching with us right now. We have Lee Sturgis saying congrats on my lock and lean course. Appreciate that, Lee. Who else we got in here? My wife's in here. She's always in here. And we
say hi to the wife.
Yeah. All right. So we got a Facebook user saying, hey, Joe, if you're on Facebook, you have to allow EV Mux to view your Facebook so that way I can bring you up on the screen. Otherwise, you're just a blank person. So, all right. We got EJ Coleman. Salute. Always a pleasure to have you in here. All right, Dave. So we're just going to roll into this, and a little bit later, we're going to roll into Q&A after we ask all these questions. So for the first question, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so my name's Dave, and based out of Salt Lake City. And Canyon Chasers was basically born way back in the early to mid 90s when I was at university. A good buddy of mine, we would always like sneak out of class and go for motorcycle rides. And we would always try to, Utah, the Rocky Mountains, the good roads are in between the mountains called canyons. And so we would try to connect as many canyons as possible between here and there. And we would just call it Canyon Chasers because we thought it was fun. Like we're going to chase down the canyons, right? So an example of that is I can ride to Yellowstone on the straightway and I can be there in maybe like 4 or 5 hours. But if I take all the canyons, it takes me a day and a half, right? And so that's kind of where it all started. And then, as you kind of progress as a rider, I really wanted to get back to the sport. And so I got involved in motorcycle education in the late 90s, became a certified Motorcycle Safety Foundation instructor in the year 2000, teaching RSS and then, the basic rider course, BRC, and moved on from there. That evolved quickly into I started doing track time. I started coaching, being rider coaches at tracks, and developed a couple programs for the Utah Sport Bike Association, the Sport Touring Advanced Rider Training Program, and a bunch taught their Advanced Rider Training Program. And that led all the way into I recently became certified as a champion certified coach with Yamaha Champions Riding School, which is I'm awfully proud of that. That was the hardest coaching certification I've ever had to get. They don't make it easy for you. So in all of that, I was making videos along the way, just kind of sharing my passion. I started off doing maintenance videos, and then I found that people really loved the riding tips videos. And that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, that's kind of how I came across you. Probably, I want to say I've been riding for about 6 or 7 years, so probably about 5 years ago, came across your content, and it's great. And the worst part is like you take a little extra time before you post another video. So I would binge watch all your videos. I'm like, oh man, now I got to wait for the next video to come out. So it's
Yeah,
awesome,
I'm trying to always like speed up the production process, but I'm cursed with being picky. And so like
right?
I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes I will record a video 6 times before I'm happy with it. And I
Right.
really need to mellow out on that.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. Yeah, I mean, with me making videos as well, I'm the same way. But sometimes just gotta tell yourself, just let it roll. It'll be fine. All right, so uh, let's go over to question two. You kind or no, actually, I'm thinking of a different one. Sorry. Question two: how long have you been riding, and what got you into riding motorcycles?
Well, I've been riding since the ripe old age of about 3 or 4.
Wow.
Uh, before I could actually, I would my dad back in the 70s, he would set me on the gas tank of his motorcycle, and I would hold on to the handlebars because in the 70s that was acceptable. That was safe back then. And we would ride all over the place, me sitting on the gas tank of his motorcycle. And my dad's a Harley man. My dad always has had Harleys, and that was kind of my upbringing. I've always been on motorcycles, and the biggest fights my dad and I always had was that I didn't really like the Harley thing as much. I was always enticed by the sportier side of things. So yeah, so I've been riding forever, basically.
Okay, so have you ever owned a Harley? Because you mentioned you lean more towards the sports bikes.
I've owned cruisers. I've owned a couple cruisers, but I've never actually owned a Harley.
Okay.
But I imagine when the old man passes, I'll own 3.
Okay. Yeah. So I ventured into Harley's adventure bike, which is the Pan America, which
Oh
was
yeah,
pretty
Pan America's
sweet.
great. My old man had a Ulysses for a while. That thing was pretty cool. Kind of like the
Okay.
precursors to the Pan America. Yeah, great bike.
Yeah. So I had it for about 2 or 3 weeks just recently, and I just traded it back in because it wasn't practical to
It didn't work for
my
you.
riding.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So
That's cool. No, no. See, that's kind of the thing, right? Like a lot of people think, and that's one thing I don't like about motorcycle culture is we kind of put ourselves in these little camps, you know.
mhm,
And I always like to quote an old friend of mine. He said, I've never met a motorcycle I didn't want to ride. I've met a lot of
right.
motorcycles I didn't want to own, but we have so much more in common than we don't, right? Like
Mhm.
I love cruisers, right? My dad just got the brand new FXR ST, I think. It's all black. It's
Okay.
pretty cool. I took it for a ride like a week ago. That thing's pretty great. Like Harleys have come a long way since that 1970 Sportster of his that I used to ride around. Like it shifted like butter. The brakes are super powerful. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty great.
Yeah, that it's funny because uh, some Harley riders they're just diehard Harley. Don't get me wrong, I love Harley, but if they see any other type of bike, they don't want anything to do with it, which is crazy to me. But
I own everything. Like I have everything but a cruiser right now. And one of my favorite motorcycles, the motorcycle that gets used the most, is a scooter. And one of my very
oh
favorite
wow,
things about the scooter is and I ruined it. It's a 50cc scooter. I put a big bore kit in, a high performance carburetor, and the thing will go 60 miles an hour. And it started life as a 50cc scooter. But you'll
oh
be
my
riding
gosh,
along, and the Harley guys will see you and they wave. And then they see you're a scooter and they take the wave back. And it just and then I wave really big and dorky at them to kind of, I saw that wave. You can't get away with taking your wave back.
that's awesome. Oh man. So, all right. So let's move on to question three. You kind of already answered this. How did the Canyon Chasers YouTube channel come about? Is there anything else that you want to add about that? Like, how did you come up with the name? Like, was it just you that started all of it?
Yeah, we've always had people that have helped along the way. But it's always been kind of a passion project for me. My education and training is in journalism, broadcast journalism. I started off life, I wanted to be a print journalist, but magazines don't exist anymore. So I kind of took that journalism side and combined it together to make Canyon Chasers. And I've been uploading videos for freaking ever. I think we were talking earlier, I uploaded my first video, I think in 2008 or something like that.
Oh.
And they were terrible then, right? Like the microphones were awful and the resolution was terrible. You could only upload 3 minutes at a time. And, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's really great to see how it's grown to where it is now, right? Where you can upload as long as you want. You know, the production quality, the camera equipment's all gotten so much better. You can really make a product that's better. When I first started, I was reluctant to upload stuff because I didn't think the quality was there. It looked terrible. I had a hard time with it. But now we're making stuff as good as feature films, you know?
Right, right. So now I know you have a website, canyonchasers.net, if I'm not mistaken. And you so now that I know that you have a background in journalism, that makes sense why I think it's all your videos you have like a blog style post underneath all the videos. So
Yeah, it started off as the very first things we posted, and I think I created the first website in 1997,
oh wow.
right around that time frame. And it was basically we would take our road trips, you know, like my wife, who from the very beginning, and my buddy Danny, we would take these motorcycle trips and we would just take the photos and I would just upload them onto this website. So we could all look at our photos when we weren't together because university and summer, go home. And you just started getting questions from that. Hey, I noticed you're riding this motorcycle. What tire are you using? You know, how did you fix this problem or whatever? And that turned into kind of, oh, well, it's easier for me to write an article answering your question than it is for me to just to respond to all these emails. And that's basically how it started. You know, we're going back to like Netscape Navigator days when I made it.
Oh,
and so, yeah, I made a website just, to do that, just to kind of share that information.
Yeah, and now look what you created now. It's
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
Netscape Navigator, man. I haven't heard that in a long time. That's back to dial-up days, man.
Yeah, it was definitely dial-up. Oh yeah, the screeching and you had to like you'd watch the picture draw a line at a time, and you get the AOL disc so you could go to the Cycle World website just so you could download pictures of like the new ZX6R, and you just watch it come like a line at a time, just waiting.
Yep. And I remember getting yelled at by my parents, say, "Get off the computer. We need to use the phone."
Yeah. We've
So
come a
awesome.
long way.
Yeah. We got Boots and Jeans riders in here. They're out on the road on a bikecation. So I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They travel all around the United States, and they're on like a 3-month trip right now.
That sounds awesome. Bikecation.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got Karen in here. She's always a regular. She says, "Hello, Joe and everyone. Sorry I'm late. We're on the road." No worries, Karen. You're here. Problem. She was at Laconia. Awesome.
Oh, right on.
Sometime. All right. Now let's move into question number 4 here. Why do you? So a lot of your videos, you promote the trail breaking. So a lot of the time you say the slow press look and roll method works, but you're guessing. So why do you prefer the trail breaking over that method?
Well, this is slow press and roll, right? It's basically how most of us were taught, right? It was a concept that was developed in the early 70s. And I think it's fundamentally flawed. The whole concept. And you have to realize too, there's with a lot of these basic rider programs, we're not just talking about MSF. A lot of states can create their own program. There's lots of different variations on it. And Canyon Chasers, we're a global entity. A majority of our audience comes from not America. And it's taught over there too, the whole concept of accelerate through the entire corner. Now, the idea of like slowing before the corner, great, love it. But when they get into the didactics of do all your braking before the turn and then accelerate throughout the turn, that's where we start running into problems. Because the way a motorcycle is designed is it's designed that when you go to the front brake, the forks compress. It's designed to slow down and turn. That's what it's engineered to do. That's what it's trying to do. So when we get into a situation where we're telling the motorcycle to accelerate through the corner, we're fighting not only how the motorcycle is designed, we're fighting physics that are telling the bike that it wants to run wider. We're accelerating into a corner where, especially if it's a blind corner, that can be problematic. And, we look at the data, and the number one riders crash is running wide in corners. Well, they're running wide in corners because we're telling them to accelerate through the entire corner. And what's really interesting with this too is the state of Washington has two basic rider programs. One is, your traditional one, and the other one's pretty progressive. And it teaches trail braking to brand new riders right from the get-go. And the difference in the data between those two students is profound, right? The number of crashes, they stay in the sport longer, all of these things. So, it's hard, because you don't really want to be too critical of a lot of these new rider programs. New rider programs are so important, right? And a lot of these instructors who are teaching new rider programs, they are doing the Lord's work. But it's frustrating for me that we have all this new information about how motorcycles work and how they're designed, and there's still so many programs that are just so entrenched with, well, this is how we did it then. Well, there's a lot of things that we did then that we don't do now. We don't run bias ply tires and drum brakes anymore. Like there's a lot of things that we know now that are better. And, we can look at the data and we can see the data and we can see how it reduces risks when we give riders the permission to slow down into corners and to wait to accelerate until they can see their exit and take away lean angle. And I've worked with so many students over the years, and they, they're reluctant. I was reluctant too, like I remember like, no, you never touch the brakes in the corner. You'll die. Right. But
Right.
you talk to riders who reluctantly try it, or they get into it and they'll come back to me and they'll be like, I had no idea riding could be this much fun. I had no idea that I could be this precise with my corners, that I could put the motorcycle exactly where I wanted it in every corner, that I never feel like I'm in a corner too fast ever again, because I'm in such precise control of my forward velocity. So that's why I'm kind of the trail braking guy, is because it adds so much joy to the riding experience to give a rider this much control over their motorcycle.
Right. Yeah. As you said, when I first started riding, I was told to never brake in the corner, and
Right.
came across your channel. I saw the trail braking videos, and not only did you explain it, you put everything up on the screen, explain it very thoroughly, so that way it actually makes sense. So that's great. And how do you think somebody should safely try and practice doing the trail braking?
I think for a rider who wants to give it a try, right? And you guys are the cruiser world, and the cruiser world is even more entrenched in kind of some of these older ideas, right? So I understand that it feels a little scary, right? So a great way, there's two things you can do to really kind of like open the world to you. The first is just think about releasing the front brake more slowly, right? When we go to the racing world, and a lot of people say, well, racing doesn't apply. Well, no, racing applies a lot, because we look at techniques that work when the speed is up and the grip is down, because they're basically the same thing, right? We're at the edge of available traction in both these situations. So we want to use what works there, right? Not necessarily the speeds the racers go, but the techniques. And when we look at the racers, we can see the racers that win and don't fall down, their first and last 5% of how they apply a brake is incredibly slow. Once they're past that 5%, they build pressure really quickly and they brake really hard and they do all the things that racers do that make us go, wow, that was cool. But their first and last 5% is really slow. So what you can do if you're thinking about, I want to try this, I want to know what this feels like, ride into a corner the same way you always do. Set your entrance speed just like you normally do. Don't really change a whole lot, except really focus on releasing that last 5% of brake pressure just a little bit more slowly. And you'll start to feel that, well, I actually feel like I have more grip from the front tire than I do before, right? And it's not going to be this like, well, just go brake hard to the apex. And like, that's a lot. But if I just release that brake slowly, you're like, oh, I can feel that. I can feel the motorcycle wants to turn. It wants to change direction. And because I'm doing it in kind of like this really finite, small part of the process, nothing's going to be scary and shaky and upsetting, right? You're not going to upset the chassis. The other thing you can do is push your motorcycle, right? And just reach over and hold that front brake and just put a little bit of brake pressure on that brake lever till you can hear the brake pads start to touch those front rotors. And when it starts to get a little bit harder to push, that's 1% brake pressure, right? That's really all you need for trail braking, right? So you just push your bike and just squeeze it and feel it. Feel that drag. What does that feel like? What is that doing, right? And then as a difference, like just do it and just mash the brake, right? And see how
Yeah.
abrupt it feels. And it feels terrible, even just pushing it in your driveway, right? The difference between
Mhm.
that first and last 5%. So, for someone who wants to try it out, put a lot of energy into those small percentage points, right? That's all we're doing. First and last 5%. Even to the point of just leave your brake light on past corner tip
Mhm.
in. That's trail braking. That's all it is.
Yeah. So now there's also controversy about how to trail brake. And some people think, I actually had this conversation out in Daytona with a couple of my buddies. They think that, or they thought that when you're trail braking, you're holding the brake and giving it throttle at the same time. And I found out through one of the Champ School videos, and I think one of your videos, that's completely wrong. You don't want to do
Right.
that.
Yeah. So that happened. Someone actually took a Freddie Spencer school years ago,
Mm.
and Freddie Spencer was talking about overlapping throttle and brake, but he was on a 500cc two stroke, and so he was talking about overlapping throttle with rear brake as kind of like a low tech, low buck wheelie control, traction control back in the day. Well, this person didn't quite understand what he was saying, went back, published a book with the misunderstanding that we're on the front brake and the throttle at the same time. When I talked to Freddie Spencer about this, and he came out and did a couple videos about this, he was like, no, we never ever overlap throttle and front brake, because this happens to us on the track all the time, right? That when I'm riding at like kind of a 9/10 pace, sometimes my glove will get kind of balled up, and my hand won't be in the right position, and my front brake and throttle will be on at the same time, even if it's only 1 or 2%. And at pace, it is absolutely terrifying. The motorcycle doesn't want to slow down, and the motorcycle doesn't want to turn. It is scary. And a lot of track riders crash in this situation where one is accidentally pushing against the other. So we know it doesn't work at speed, right? And that's our thing, right? And if it doesn't work at speed, it's not going to work at low speed. The rear brake is a different situation. We're talking about the front brake here. And so, yeah, it just simply doesn't work. And we can even look at the data. A lot of these race bikes have all the data analytics. We can see what the throttle position is. We can see what the brake pressure is. We can see exactly when there is overlap, and we can see how that adversely affects the motorcycle stability. So you can drag the rear brake against the throttle. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we
Mm.
never want to drag the throttle against the front brake. We never want to push those two forces against each other, because it puts a bike in a position where it doesn't want to do either thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And Dave did a whole video on this on his channel, and I think that was just recently, if I'm not mistaken. But make sure you go to his channel and check it out, because he explained it so well, and it just makes complete sense. And now I'm practicing my trail braking. I still haven't perfected it, but we'll get there one day.
Well, we're all trying to perfect it. I don't feel like I perfected it either, right? Like,
Yeah.
I go up there and I ride with like the Champ School instructors. I'm just a coach. I ride with the instructors, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are like I suck as a rider. I'm terrible. So we're all trying to perfect it. And right. And that's kind of the joy of motorcycling is, I've been riding my whole life, and I'm still trying to get better. And I still extract a lot of joy from trying to find that precision. It was I think it was an old MSF thing that was like, the more you know, the better it gets. And that is
Mhm.
so true, right? The better you get, the more precision, the more it just gets so much better. And we're not even talking about if you don't like riding fast, right? This isn't about just riding fast. This is about finding precision and control.
Right. Yeah. And as soon as you start getting better and better, as you said, it's more enjoyable. I mean, it's no fun riding scared. I mean, it sucks the fun out of it unless you're just going down straight roads all day, and that's not fun.
That's not fun either, right? No, I don't enjoy being scared, right? And it's
Right.
the way Champ School kind of broke down trail breaking, and trail breaking is kind of a confusing term, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of, I don't really like the term, but how they say it, and I just think it's so genius. We go to the brakes when we're nervous. I can do that. We
Right.
slow until we're happy with our speed and our direction. Well, I can do that too.
Yeah.
We accelerate when I can see and I can take away lean angle. It's not this complicated, like radius, lean, percentage, whatever. It is kind of like this. You ride with your heart to a certain extent. I'm nervous. I'm
Hmm.
going to my brakes. Middle of a turn, it's tightening up. I'm nervous. I'm going back to the brakes. I'm going to bring that anxiety back down, because I don't
Hmm.
enjoy being afraid. I don't enjoy that. I watch horror movies for that. And even then, they make
Yeah.
me too scared and I turn them off.
Yeah. It's definitely made me a little more comfortable if I know or if I come into a situation where I'm coming in too hot and I'm almost pretty much in the turn, I'm not afraid to touch the front brake anymore. As long as you're doing it right, nice and smooth, you don't want to jab it or you're going to
Right, right.
wash out.
We shouldn't be afraid of our front brake. We should be afraid of abruptness, right? Don't be afraid to go to your front brake. Go be afraid of
Right.
going to your front brake abruptly,
Right.
because the abruptness is what causes all the horror stories that you've heard over the years.
Yep. Let's see what we got some of the viewers saying in here. Andrew Schultz says, one of the best things I took from the BMW road class was late apex and trail braking.
Yeah, they kind of work together. I on the street, on the track, the apex is a very definitive point, right? They put cones on it, you can look for it, you can aim for it, and all these things like that. On the
Mhm.
street, the apex becomes a little bit problematic because depending on which part of the world you ride in, your apex might put your head into the oncoming lane, right? So I like to think of it not necessarily in terms of the apex, but as the decision point, right? And that's the point where I can see and take away lean angle. At that point, if I can see that it's clear and it's good, then I can apex right on top of the yellow line because I can visually confirm that there's not a vehicle there. I can visually confirm that it's safe, and that's when I can apex. But it kind of gives you this very you have a plan for every corner, right? Like the delayed apex and trail braking. I go into every corner knowing how I'm going to approach it, prepared to deal with anything that might happen unexpectedly. And that's empowering, right? Yeah. So great comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have this was an interesting comment from Mark DeGrasse. He said, I first learned trail braking in the Forza racing game with a controller and then 3,000 hours on Project Cars, one simulation racing, and then 3K hours in Assetto Corsa simulation racing with I don't Fanatec hardware. I don't know what
Fanatic.
that is.
Yeah, no,
That's
and I think
interesting.
that brings up a great point too. Airplanes slow down when they turn, boats slow down to turn, bicycles slow down to turn, cars slow
Yeah.
down to turn. Why do we suddenly think that motorcycles need to accelerate to turn? Right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's just a broken model. And you can tell, especially like these advanced video games, the physics are in there and they're really good. And if you want to
Mhm.
do the motorcycle one, don't do the ride 4, I think it's do the MotoGP games. The MotoGP
Mhm.
games, the trail braking in MotoGP game, the physics in the MotoGP games is incredibly accurate. It's really fun. It's crazy cool.
That's awesome. All right, so now let's roll into our next question that I have in here. Well, we just talked about trail braking. So, why do you think so many people are afraid of using the front brakes in a turn?
I would say because of abruptness. They've probably been taught that it's bad, so they're afraid of
Right.
it. And so they end up going into a corner and like, don't touch the front brake, don't touch the front brake, don't touch the front brake until things start to really get out of hand, until things get really kind of extreme. And then they go into that, they hit that panic phase. And then they're just like, I need to slow. And then it's this abrupt thing. And either it causes a crash, or it unsettles the bike and it's this really horrible sensation. So yeah, I mean, or we were all kids on bicycles, and the first time you got on a bicycle with a handbrake, you leaned over the handlebars and you grabbed the front brake and you looped it, and you're like, "Yeah, front brake bad. I'm going to keep skidding the rear." And so we kind of get these ideas kind of ingrained in us. But look at any motorcycle, right? Your Harley's notwithstanding, right? You have two big giant discs on the front, and
Right.
well, you guys have one big one on the back. We have one itty bitty one on the back, right?
Mhm.
So motorcycles are designed and engineered that's where like the weight goes to the front tire, grip comes from weight, the front brake. It's all about like loading that tire and putting weight over that front tire, and then you have incredible amounts of grip available to you once you load it. Don't be
Right.
abrupt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we you guys are doing a great job of trying to get this message across, and I mean, YouTube it's reaching millions of people. So I think they need to have some type of reform in the basic rider course, kind of revamp that because basically, in my opinion, once you graduate the basic rider course, you're ready to go out to a parking lot and practice. And then they should be taking the advanced riders course to be getting on the road.
Yeah, the other challenge I think a lot of the beginner rider courses face is they have to prepare you to pass the test,
Right.
right? Well, and the test might be completely nonsensical, right? So
Hmm.
they're preparing you for something that doesn't really have a whole lot of real world application. And yeah, and I would love it if MSF or whomever, any basic right, if they would just soften, slow look, press and roll to just say roll when you can see your exit, takeaway, lean angle, because the rest of it's fine, right? Slow look,
Yeah.
press, roll when you can see your exit, takeaway, lean angle. That would solve so many problems. That, and they need to allow people to cover the front brake. That is the other place where we're dying, right? We're dying because
Yep.
under application of the front brake and the time it takes people to get to the front brake. We look at all this crash data. Telling people not to cover the front brake is putting them at a huge disadvantage. Cover your front brake. You can save yourself almost a football field's distance just by covering the front brake. When you're
Right.
going at freeway speeds, a football field is a that's a world. That's a lifetime.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So, uh, real quick, I'm gonna bring up the sponsor of this live stream again, Dave. I'm gonna put you backstage here for a second while I introduce Break Free here. So, if you guys aren't familiar with Break Free, it's the tail light that goes on the back of your helmet, works as a brake light, and they're obviously the sponsor of this stream. So, here's a little quick video that I put together for explaining exactly what the Break Free is.
When you're riding on two wheels, there's one rule you can't ignore. If they can't see you, they can't avoid you. That's why we have to do everything we can to be more visible while we're out on the road. In this video, I'm going to unbox and review the Break Free Smart Brake Light. Let's talk features for a second. This light is special because it's completely wireless. You don't need to use any apps or connect it via Bluetooth to use it. So how does it work? It has sensors in it so it knows when you're braking or slowing down. This is great because sometimes we use engine braking to slow down. That means we're not using our brakes, so our taillights aren't going on. This will give the motorists behind you a heads up that you're slowing down. It has a rechargeable battery that's supposed to last 8 to 12 hours depending on which mode you have it in. This light is IP65 waterproof and weighs in at 7 ounces, so it's really light. For the light itself, it has 100 LEDs and it's a single one-button operation, so they keep it simple. We have the light all mounted to the helmet, now we have to test it. Let's roll, baby.
Okay guys, we are on the bike. Let's test this bad boy out. Downshifting should illuminated. All right, now I'm slowing down with the brakes. Making a left. Okay, so now we're coming up to the stop sign. We're gonna do a hard stop. Should have blinked. All right, now we're gonna do some head movements to see if this thing's gonna blink or not. They claim that it won't, so we'll move my head up and down, side to side and stuff. All right, now I'm rolling off the throttle. All right, guys, that was the ride test.
As you just saw, this light works exactly as advertised. So what do I think about it? This is a fantastic product. Not only does it look cool, it adds an extra layer of safety.
I have all their info linked down in the description, and you can use my special promo code JOGO10 for 10% off, or you can just click on the link in the description of this video. Fantastic product, highly suggest it. All right, Dave, sorry about the delay there.
It's a great product. I believe in Break Free. I think that's a good thing.
Yes, exactly. I mean, anything to keep us safer. And the one thing that I do love about it is it's on the back of your head, so it's eye level with the driver behind you. I mean, it's a game changer. And everywhere I go, I get compliments about it. They're like, "Wow, that thing's pretty cool."
Yeah, if for anybody who rides in traffic at any level, I think you should have one.
Right. Yeah. All right. So
And
now
I'm not sponsored by them.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So for question number 6, what exact you've mentioned Champ School in the stream so far. So what exactly is Yamaha Champ School?
So Yamaha Champions Riding School, it was born from the Freddie Spencer Riding School. And for those, if you're cruiser guys and you don't follow racing, Freddie Spencer is one of the greatest American road racers of all time. He was the last person to ever win the 250 and the 500 GP championship in the same year, which was unheard of. He would get off the 250 GP bike, drink the champagne, jump on the 500 GP bike and go win that race. It was, absolutely incredible. And he started a school to kind of come back, and it was based largely around trail braking, because he was seeing all the crashes, and he was seeing, it's like, riders shouldn't have to be falling like this. Like, there's a better way. Started the school, did that for a number of years. He hired Nick Einach. Nick Einach was a famous moto journalist with Motorcyclist magazine. He wrote a famous article called The Pace, which when I was in college, that was a big game changer. And then he came back and he wrote The Pace 2.0, because he's like, you know what, you need to use more brake in the canyons. And I really admired him for coming back and kind of revising it. He's like, look, I made a mistake. Let me give you more updated information. Well, that got him a job with Freddie Spencer. When Freddie Spencer retired, their lead sponsor, Yamaha, kind of took over, kind of helped them keep things off the ground. They were here in Salt Lake City. And they basically look at, because they're Yamaha, they have access to the best riders in the world. They have access to the engineers. They have access to this great corporation. And they're looking at what the best riders in the world are doing. And they base their curriculum around that. And when there is new information, when new techniques are developed, they change their curriculum to implement that. Now, you might be sitting there as a cruiser person thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not a sport bike guy. I'm a cruiser guy. No, there's Yamaha makes cruisers too. They do. And so their school, they have a bunch of really great programs. They have like their 2-day track school, but they also have their street rider program, which is a 1-day program. It is incredible. They also have their online programs, which is what I've been helping them with out for a couple of years now. Champ U online. It's really for $50 or whatever. And I have a coupon code for that I give out. If you want to use coupon code FOCUS, you get a discount on any Champ School product. But it's all the current information. It kind of, you had your basic rider course, maybe you even did an experienced rider course, you've done something else, and you're like, I want a refresher. You sign up for the Champ U online. You have that program for the rest of your life. You go in there, you can rewatch the videos. They give you exercises you can do. And they've developed a whole bunch of new programs since the first one. They have a new rider program. They have Champ Body now, which is, one thing that I learned helping them make that is, you get stiff between your shoulders. You're riding and I'm like, oh, I'm stiff between your shoulders. Well, they brought in like doctors, and they're like, well, you're getting stiff between your shoulders because you're not breathing correctly. And you're like, oh, I thought it was my handlebar position. I thought it was no, it's you're not breathing. So there's just a ton of content that comes through Champ U. I am really proud to be associated and be working with them because I think what they're doing, I just am really drawn to data-driven instruction, right? We have new information, we're going to change the instruction. We're going to make decisions. We're going to do things based on the data, not just on what Grandpa Ned did in the 40s. Right. Like, we're going to look at what are the best riders in the world doing. We're going to make that. And Nick, because he was a journalist, Nick Einach, he has a real talent in distilling down these really complicated techniques into something that's so understandable, right? Go to the brakes when you're nervous. That's from Nick, and it's genius. It's pure genius. And the whole program is like that.
Yeah. So how did you become an instructor over there? Because that's, you went through all their courses before you became an instructor? Or?
Oh yeah. You got to go through the whole thing. And I'm just a coach. There's a hierarchy. I'm the low level coach guy. The instructors are much higher than me. They invited me out to come do a school, and I was familiar with them because they were here in Salt Lake. So I've known a bunch of the instructors for years. I've been friends with them. Even before our like kind of more formal association, I would send them scripts and I was like, is this accurate? Is this the right way to say this? Is this? And so I did their school. And I was like, this is better than I thought it was going to be. This is profound. And one thing just kind of led to another. I was working with them. How can I work with you guys? How can I work with you guys? I was like, and they invited me to go through their coach program. And it was not easy. It was incredibly hard. Yeah. You can't be slow, and you got to be able to explain things. And it was the toughest instructor or the certification I've ever went through to go through their coach program. So maybe someday awesome. I'll make it up to instructor level. I would totally relish that.
I mean, you seem extremely knowledgeable, so I don't think you're going to have an issue eventually becoming one.
Well, thank you.
Mark DeGrasse says, I took it, well worth it in my opinion. And, I'm actually, me and my buddy Q from YouTube channel, Riding and Wrenching, we plan on getting together and doing the street course, because we both took I don't know if you ever heard of Lock and Lean. It's slow speed motorcycle stuff. I took it last weekend. He took it a few months ago. And so we're always searching for the next class and course to take, because you can combine everything that you're learning together. I mean, you're just all in all going to be a better rider.
Well, we're all looking to become that well-rounded rider, right? Or we should be,
Yeah.
right? We should all be looking uphill. How do I improve? How do I take my riding to the next level, right? Because, you know, once it just gets better, it just gets better,
Yeah.
right? The whole experience is better when you're,
Yeah. So now we're gonna dive in a little bit to the Champ U, the online school. So if you can't make it out to the actual Champ School or any of the other programs that they got, you have the online, and I have a little promo video kind of explaining what exactly that is.
Welcome to an online curriculum that's affordable, immediately available. It's several hours of video, quizzes, and drills. It's something we've put over a year into here at the Champ School, and this will deliver the Champions Habits message to any rider who wants to become awesome. Champ U, it's available right now, or if you sign up for any of our in-person programs, it'll be included with your tuition. Champ U, let's grow this industry by improving rider education. Champ U.
Yeah, there you guys have it. I'm gonna end up taking that Champ U because I'm always trying to expand my knowledge. What was that promo code again, Dave?
Focus.
Focus.
FOCUS. Yeah, and that works for any Champ product. And it basically, what's great about if you do the Champ U online, the first one, that's basically the Champ School information, right? So when you go to do the Champ Street, you'll have a leg up because you'll already be kind of familiar with the ideas and the concepts and stuff like that. So when you start riding your motorcycle, having already gone through Champ U, you'll be able to take more advantage of the instructors when they're there looking at you, instead of spending so much time like, so what do you mean by umbrella of direction? You already know what umbrella of direction is. It'll help you get into the program and get the most out of the hands-on riding portion of it.
Right. So you suggest doing the Champ U first before you go to any of the courses.
Yeah. Yeah. And depending on where you are, like I recommend, like for new riders who are curious about riding it, even before you take your basic rider course, go through the Champ U New Rider program. It really sets you up really well. It is a well thought out program. So yeah, I would encourage you to do Champ U before you do Champ Street. And I really, for the vast majority of riders, I think Champ Street is honestly the better product because, unless you're really, I love track days. Like it's a big passion of mine. So the full Champ School thing was, oh man, I was in heaven because it was talking about like dragging knees and trail braking to the apex. And like, it really got deep into the weeds for me. But if you're more of a street rider and you're like, I just want like the 80%, you get 80% out of the Champ Street program. It's really good.
That's cool. Yeah, because I don't ever plan on doing any track riding, but I know
you might after you do Champ Street, you'll be like, oh, this is kind of cool. We get Harleys. They've had Harleys and big bikes in the Champ School on the track. Even where I coach, we get there's two big cruisers who come to every track day. And one's
Really?
funny. It was like a Dyna Wide Glide, right? And he came out the first time and I was like, oh, you're kind of low to the ground. And like he came, he had a gas, and now like he's raised the thing like 6 inches. He's got like custom Oleans forks on the front with like these big giant Brembo monoblocks, and I was like, dude, you should just go buy another motorcycle. He's like, no, I'm kind of attached to this one. And I'm like, well, you look awesome out there, because like it's one thing, like the motorcycle doesn't know that it's not a sport bike, right? It only knows the inputs that we give it, and it is the bagger racing is super cool because we're seeing those Harleys out there killing it, right? They're doing awesome stuff, and it's really cool at my local track day. So don't ever say never, Joe. You might end up in some track time.
So you're saying cruisers actually show up there. So obviously they're not going to be able to lean as much, but they'll still accept them coming in and riding
if they
faster?
don't find another track day provider, because, you know, and when you look at like the techniques that we really advocate for, you know, like the trail braking, one of the big concepts that we talk about, and it's super important for cruiser riders because you have less cornering clearance, is we
Right.
brake a little bit later into the corner. So we're actually going straighter for longer, so that at the point where we need to turn, at the point where we need to carry the most amount of lean angle, we're going the slowest. So we can actually do that turning without having to lean as far, get the motorcycle pointed and go back to the gas. So it's not that old school way where you had to be on the side of the tire forever, where a cruiser is limited. You know, we can,
Right.
the modern riding technique puts a cruiser at far less of a disadvantage in the corners. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So I'll keep that in mind. I might take both courses then, the road one and the track one. That'd be pretty neat. See what we got going on in the comments over here. Got Karen. She's referring back to the trail braking. I briefly used my front brake in a turn by accident one time. Scared the living daylights out of me. I was surprised when I did not crash.
So I think what Karen is talking about, like, I'd be interested to know, how did she squeeze that front brake? Right? You know, because you didn't crash. That's great. This is what we always like to see, you know, but, you know, like that fear of using that front brake, right? Like there's really nothing wrong with using a little bit of front brake pressure, but it's that stabby, grabby that can be really scary.
Right. Yeah. And Jimmy the Bull says riding is so much more fun when you know what you're doing. Of course.
Yes, indeed.
And then Mark DeGrasse says, would love to ride one of those King of the Bagger bikes. That would be awesome. I don't know if I'd be able to handle it.
No. They handle really well. They're pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
Have you got to ride one before?
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, cause I grew up on Harleys, right? And you're on this thing and it's up higher than you're used to a Harley being, and the brakes are like more like what a super bike brakes are like. And then you get on and you're like, oh, this is just, it's kind of heavy, but it's like, it's still a motorcycle. Yeah. And they're quick. You know, they put a lot of money into those motors.
Right. Yeah. And Karen said she hit the brakes very lightly.
Very lightly. That's great, Karen. Like, you shouldn't be scared or afraid. It turned out well, right? So glad to hear it was very lightly. That's the right way.
But did you die? That's
did you die?
All right. So now that you're, oh no, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I haven't done a live stream in quite a while. So, all right, question number 7 here. In your opinion, this should be good. Which skills are more important, riding at speed or slow speed maneuvers? Because a lot of my audience is really into the slow speed maneuvers, and I'm not sure if they're really into learning at speed or not.
So as an instructor, it's the most common answer to a question is it depends, right? And when we look at the data, you know, I'm going to gravitate towards the faster stuff because that's where riders are dying. You know, like those are the skills I want to see improved. So riders, you know, we can improve the safety of riders. And the problem I see with a lot of the slow speed stuff, and don't get me wrong about the slow speed stuff. If that's what you enjoy doing, that the cone rodeo, that's really cool. If you're into that, by all means, be into that. It's cool. There is an absolute skill to that. My criticism of a lot of the slow speed stuff is the motorcycle culture tends to kind of be leaning towards or almost requiring that riders be able to do foot on pegs, lock to lock U-turns as a measure of a good rider, right? Well, not many riders are dying because they couldn't do a U-turn at the gas station, right? But what we do see, this is a sobering statistic. 85% of riders who graduate a basic rider course leave the sport within 2 years. 85%, right? Wow. So we're losing these new riders somewhere. And what I see a lot of, brand new rider, they get their first motorcycle, you know, they've done their parking lot drills, they're getting the confidence, they're going to go out, they're going to go meet for like a breakfast ride. You know, they get to the parking lot and they're trying to do the thing with their foot on the foot pegs and they tip over. They're embarrassed. Someone has to come pick the motorcycle up off their foot. They scratch the pipe, you know, and it just kind of takes some of the fun out of it, you know? And then they're like, oh, that wasn't fun, but okay, well, everyone tips over, right? And then, you know, a couple weeks later, they go to the gas station, same thing happens. They're trapped under their motorcycle. And it's like, yeah, there is a value in learning a slow speed skill. But there
Yeah.
is also no shame in putting your foot out when you're doing a U-turn. You don't have to drop your motorcycle repeatedly before you get this. As a new rider, I would rather a new rider put their feet out and paddle their way around and focus more on getting the motorcycle slowed into corners, covering that front brake, being able to stop the motorcycle, and not worry so much about that slow speed stuff. You know, a lot of the basic rider programs, they coach a lot of that slow speed stuff because that's the environment they have to coach in. They have a parking lot. So you have to kind of build exercises that work within that environment, you know? So that's my feeling on slow speed stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you enjoy doing it, man, this is a sport of passion. Do what you enjoy doing, right? And like, no doubt, those police officers and the cone things, that's impressive. But I can tell you, just because you can ride well in the cones, it doesn't mean you can ride well fast. I've done a lot of contract coaching with our local Utah Highway Patrol. They can out cone weave me 10-1, right? They kill me in the cone weave. But when we get on the racetrack and I'm trying to teach them kind of these other techniques, they are not very fast. You see them taking a lot of risk with a lot of lean angle. Most of them are on BMWs, so they're just like banging the engine cases against the ground. And you're like, oh my gosh, these guys are going to crash. And I'm just like one hand on the handlebar behind them, right? So one skill doesn't necessarily translate to the other. And so that's kind of my concern with these slow speed stuff. Yeah, they're great. But just because you're really good at it doesn't mean it's going to translate to this other environment. We want to be the well-rounded rider. You know, well-rounded.
Yeah.
We want to be we want to be a rider that's good at everything, right? So practice all the things. And for a newer rider, I would encourage them to practice more on getting really proficient with the brakes before worrying about the cone weaves and the box of love and the cone rodeo stuff.
Yeah. That was a great explanation. Well-rounded rider. Try and say
which
that
is really hard to say. Well-rounded rider.
Once you get good at saying that, then become one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion, I love doing the slow speed stuff, and then I get your opinion for sure. It completely makes sense. And when it comes to the slow speed stuff, I don't think you have to do the 18-foot U-turn. As long as you can do, just a basic U-turn, so that way you don't increase the risk of falling over at slow speeds. I mean, and then riding at speed, obviously that's the most dangerous. So focus on that and get better at that. Practice them both. I mean,
yeah. Practice. The other thing too is like, Utah out here in the Rocky Mountain West, I go for a big, road trip or a 3-day trip, I might be 2 days away from the nearest motorcycle shop. So if I'm doing that U-turn on that sketchy 2-lane road with gravel on the edge, I'm not willing to drop my bike and potentially break my shift lever off, Right. So like my thing is just do a foot ready U-turn. That's all I really say is just do a foot ready U-turn. You don't have to drop your motorcycle,
Right.
especially in these high consequences areas, don't drop your motorcycle. It's
Jimmy the Bull says number one accident, failure to negotiate a corner.
Exactly right. Running wide in corners is specifically what it is. Yeah. Number one. And we got to get that number down. It's tragic.
Yeah. Let's move into question number 8 here. So since you've been MSF coach, now you're a coach for the Yamaha Champion School. What's the biggest mistake you see when riders are cornering?
Abruptness and failure to adapt, I think, are kind of the two big ones. Like you always hear about, I'll give a third one and 3, because like I can't just stop with one. A lot of programs always talk about look ahead. Great advice, but I think it's poorly formulated. I really like the term focus. My coupon code, by the way. Focus on where you are and what you're doing. Even when you're driving your car out of your neighborhood, just say focus and pay attention to what your eyes do, right? Like, focus on where you are and what you're doing. It's not just the look up thing. When we do that, abruptness, you see a lot of people, it kind of like compounds, right? I'm not focusing, something surprises me, then I'm abrupt, then I fall, and those are kind of the two big ones. And then the last one is not being an adaptable rider. Like it's raining now. So what do we got to do? I now have less grip to work with. I need to adjust my riding to deal with the fact that I have less grip. I now have my passenger on the back. The bike is going to take longer to stop. It's going to be harder to turn. I need to adapt my riding. I can't ride at the pace that I like to ride by myself when I have my significant other, my child, my wife on the back seat. So
Right, yeah.
being an adaptable rider, I think, is another big factor. Those are the big three that I think: focus,
Yeah.
abruptness, failing to adapt.
Now, is there anything special that you do in order to try to correct those three mistakes when you're coaching people?
I try to tell riders every time before you get on your motorcycle, right? The greatest motorcycle racer in the whole world, Valentino Rossi. He's the Michael Jordan of motorcycles. He's incredible. Every time before he got on his motorcycle, he would kneel down and grab onto his foot peg, and he would just kind of do whatever he did down there. And so I tell all riders, every time before you get on a motorcycle, just stop and focus on where you are and what you're doing. You're about to do something very dangerous. Take that seriously. Like, understand and accept the risk that you're going to take, and put yourself in the right mindset. Focus on where it's raining today, right? It helps you adapt. I'm focusing on the situations that I'm in. And usually once you get past that, the abruptness, I put a lot of energy into really telling people to focus on the first and last 5% of every control. First 5% of how we squeeze the brake, last 5% of how we release the brake. We can see our exit, takeaway lean angle, first 5% of how you add throttle. We don't want to just whack the throttle open, right? That's an abrupt input. That tire's not loaded yet, right? That could cause a problem. Some programs teach to abruptly countersteer, right? No, we don't want to ever abruptly countersteer, because we don't have weight over that front tire yet. An abrupt countersteer can cause a problem, right? The only thing you're allowed to do abruptly on a motorcycle is we can abruptly take away lean angle. Ooh, I can feel it sliding. Hurry, put it back upright as quickly as I can, which is the advantage of posture, right? But everything else is just really think about the first and last 5% of every control. You do that and you'll see it might feel slower, but your buddies will be like, man, you're going really quick through that canyon. I had a hard time keeping up with you. And you're like, really?
Yeah.
I was just going slow, bro. I was just thinking about that first and last 5%.
Yeah, in all actuality, I believe you've said it before, the fastest riders are the slowest in the curves.
Yeah, the fastest riders use the brakes the most, which means they go to the brakes earlier, lighter, and longer. And when we, again, being with Yamaha, we have access to these guys. They put a radar gun at like a top tier world championship winning racer, put a radar gun at him at the corner, and they put the radar gun at a club racer. The club racer had higher cornering speed than the championship world championship racer, right? So, the techniques that we're trying to get to the slowest part of the racers. They're trying to get to the slowest part of the corner as quickly as they can, get the motorcycle turned when they're going the slowest, and then get away from the slowest part of the corner as quickly as they can. They're not trying to carry a lot of speed in the corners because there's just so much risk there.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand it, and that's why spread the word, man.
Yeah, it's good-natured people that are programs that are giving out kind of less than ideal information, or they're giving out the wrong information or the right information at the wrong time, right? Telling a new rider to do something they may not be ready to do, right? And then you kind of end up building these bad habits that are harder to overcome.
Right.
And then they get scared. They've dropped their bike a couple times. This isn't fun. And then you see that bike on Craigslist, right? Has 3,000 miles on it, comes with 2 oil filters, jacket and a helmet. I'm like, oh, I just don't have time to ride. No, that's not what happened. They tipped over a couple times and it wasn't fun for them. And that's how we're losing 85% of our riders.
Yep. Aaron says, awesome advice, Dave. Focus. Love it.
Yeah. It's my favorite.
I like that. I never even thought of something like that, and I like it. I'm gonna start thinking about that once.
Yeah, because eyes up. What is eyes up? Eyes up where? What am I looking at? The trees?
Right.
Like, what are my eyes up? What does that mean?
Yep. All right. So now for this question number 9, I have a little video that I'm gonna play, and then I'll go ahead and ask you this question. into this question. I apologize. You've probably seen that video a million times, and some of you watching probably have seen it as well. But as far as this question goes, what gave you the idea to start drawing a racetrack in your driveway?
Well, like all good ideas, they came from my wife. So it was yeah. So the security camera was going off every night, and it was in the midst of COVID, and it was like the world was falling apart and people were marching with guns, and like it was just like kind of a traumatic time in the world. And every night the security camera would go off, and the camera, the way it was set up was there's a person at the back gate. I'm like, who's at my back gate? And so you look and it's just this kid, right? And at first I was kind of like, that kid, and then you started to look forward to it. And my wife was like, you should make him a racetrack. I'm like, I'm not going to make him a racetrack. That's stupid. And then she goes to bed and I'm watching TV and I'm like, a racetrack, that's a good idea. So yeah, that's totally what it started out as. And, and it went on from there.
Yeah, that's an awesome video, because I mean, you probably didn't expect for that. It's at like something like over 2 million views. I mean,
I think it's like it depends on where you look at it. I think the overall, it's like in the hundreds of millions across all platforms of views.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the zeitgeist, I think.
Yeah. Now, when that video started taking off, what did you start thinking? Did you think it was going to get that many views?
No, I wasn't even going to upload it. Like I was just kind of sharing it with my friends, my motorcycle buddies. I'm like, oh, hey, look what I did. And they're like, oh yeah. And even in the video, you can hear me say, like, I'm talking to Keith said I should do this, right? Well, Keith's a riding buddy. He rides a Ducati Monster. And so like, I'm talking to him while I'm making these little clips as I was just sending to them on text message. And then they was like, you got to upload this. You got to upload this. And because it was COVID and I wasn't able to make much content, I was like, well, I'll just upload it to keep the algorithm alive. Maybe it'll get a couple hundred views. Who knows? And then for the first couple days, it did nothing. I was like, yeah, that's what I expected. And then I went for a mountain bike ride and NBC was on the phone, and like it happened constantly. Like Good Morning America was calling. It was crazy. It was, yeah. I even got to go spend some time with Jay Leno last year because of it. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. No complaints from me. That worked out.
Yeah. So as for me, just starting out being a creator on YouTube, I feel like the videos that you put the least effort into and just post just because those are always your good ones. And I don't understand it.
I don't understand either. Yeah. Cause you put your heart and soul into, like, I have some videos out there that I put like months of research, interviewed experts. They do nothing,
Right.
they're total duds, but to some people, like they loved them. So that's why, but then like a video you don't even think about, right? Goes crazy.
It just takes off. Yep. So my wife says that is so cool and what a great idea. Karen says your wife is smart.
My wife is smart. Yeah, she's the smart one she definitely is.
Yeah. Lee Sturgis says, sweet, gave the little man a good time for the day, and a bunch of other people too. That make sure you guys go to his channel and watch the entire video, because I chopped it up a little bit. The video is about 3.5 minutes long. It's good. All right. Now we will move into the last question. I always ask this question to everybody that comes on because everybody has a unique answer. So what was the worst experience you've ever had on a motorcycle?
I actually made a whole video about the worst experience I had on a motorcycle. And it honestly dovetails exactly into what we've been talking about. But when I was a basic rider coach and I was all in on the slow look press and roll, we went out to, my wife and some friends of ours, we went out to California, Monterey, to go see the MotoGP racing. And we were, well, we'll just do a day ride for today. It's just free practice. We'll come back and watch it. And, you're riding in California, and California is epic, right? It's motorcycle land. Every road's gorgeous and fantastic. And I was a little bit distracted, and I came into a corner a little too, it was a downhill off-camber corner. I kind of came into it a little too quick, and I'm like, well, you just got to stay on the gas and lean more, right? That's what they tell you. That's what I've been telling students for 10 years. Stay on the gas and lean more. Well, I stayed on the gas and leaned more. And wouldn't you know it, I started running wide. There's a car coming up the hill, right? My wife's right behind me. It was inches of me almost like center punching this poor silver Honda as I went off the road on the other side, and there was a cliff on the other side. I almost went off the other side. And it was at that moment that I was basically like, you know what, this isn't fun for me anymore. You know, like I don't enjoy this. It's not fun. It's miserable. You know, maybe I'm not good at it. I was watching all my other friends who had adapted to trail breaking. I was just watching them just progress and flourish as riders while I was sitting here running wide on this stupid simple corner. And that night, you know, we ran into some friends from Champ School, and one of them, guy named Shorty, he's like, Dave, let me talk to you. Let me give you the good news of trail breaking. And he kind of like gave me the gospel of trail breaking. And it sounds stupid, but it feels kind of like finding the right religion. Suddenly you're like, oh, it's easier. It's less work. It's like, I'm not putting all this effort into it. And it just completely brought the joy of the sport back to me. And that was a big inspiration for, you know, kind of what I'm doing now. It's like, if it could turn around my riding that profoundly to a point where, you know, I'm near 1 million miles on a motorcycle, right? And I was ready to give up. And, you know, if it can turn my riding around where it turned into, I couldn't wait to get on the motorcycle. I couldn't wait to go for a ride. I couldn't wait to go out and practice it and do some more track days. If it can do that for me, like, I want to give that to somebody else, right? Like, help you find the joy in riding, you know, and it doesn't have to be fast. Like, I don't hate cruisers. Like, you know, I hate that whole thing. It's not about being fast. It's about the precision and the joy and the comfort and the being in control and knowing what you're going to be doing into every corner. That's to me, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, your wife rides as well?
Oh yeah. She was a coach too. She was a coach with me. Yeah. So we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, and
wow.
yeah,
Congrats.
she just hates being on camera, but she's basically the drone shots. She's responsible for most of those drone shots. She's a big part of the channel, but she hates being seen. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good. Now you have somebody that can take care of some of that technical stuff and kind of split off the workload. Now, I went to your website and read the about page, and you have like a whole team that works on the Canyon Chasers stuff that aren't
those
always
are like
on
the
camera.
longest friends that they advise. I talk to, you know, Alex is one of my closest friends. He works at Champ School. He's a staff instructor at Champ School. We have Brian. Brian is a championship winning racer. We go to him all the time for advice. You know, we have top mechanics. So a lot of the people listed there are a lot of the people I go to for advice. I'm not just pulling stuff. This isn't just me saying these things, right? I want to make sure every bit of information that I goes out is vetted. It's looked at. Experts kind of agree with it. I'm not just like, Dave says, well, that's great what Dave says, but you know, I want to know what some of these other people have to say. That's more important than what I have to say.
Yeah, and that's fantastic because you back up what you say with the I can't even say it, statistics. You know, it's absolutely great. All right, so guys, now we're going to end up opening this up for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions for Dave, go ahead and start leaving it down in the chat, and we'll spark up the conversation and answer your questions if you guys got any.
Ask me anything. Well, maybe not anything.
Yeah. Family friendly, guys. Suitable for work. Let's see. My dad's here. He says, what you guys do for riders can't be measured. It off the charts. I'm not 100% sure what that means.
He says, well, yeah, can't be measured. It's off the charts. Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. We're always trying to get back to the sport that's given to us, you know, like it's like, you guys know, you're out there on your motorcycles, you're out there riding, you know how great it feels. Those warm days when, oh man, it's magic. It's magic.
Yep. There just says Papa Go being OG, LOL. Hey, we got Rich the Return Rider in here. He's got a great YouTube channel. He rides Goldwings, a Goldwing. He says, how important is doing a track day for folks that like to ride the Twisties?
So think of it like this. A track day is your favorite stretch of twisty road with no oncoming traffic, no police officers, no gravel, hopefully no deer, you know, no blue hairs, no nothing, where you can just go focus on whatever it is that you want to focus on. It's, I think for the riders who are really drawn to that kind of twisty aspect of things, it is great fun because, you know, we always want to ride like at 60, 80%. Well, my 60, 80% on the track just got faster because I don't have to worry about all these other things going on. Everybody's going the same direction. I'm not going to run into a tree or a guardrail or a sign or any of these other things. You know, tracks are designed very specifically to have very safe runoff zones. You know, I've been teaching track days since what, '06. So what, that's 15, 16, 7, 6, a lot of years. And I think I've only seen in that time 2 injuries of note. One was a broken leg,
wow.
and one, the guy had a heart attack. I don't know if we can really count that one. Maybe he was just having
Oh,
so
wow.
much fun that he just got so, you know,
my
keep
gosh.
chill, stay relaxed.
Yeah, that is something that intrigues me about track riding, is because you're in a controlled environment, and it's so much safer than trying to practice with everything that you mentioned, like traffic coming at you and everything like that.
Yeah, it's addicting to kind of have that freedom to just ride your ride, legitimately ride your ride where you're not worried about anything else. You're not worried about making anybody mad, you know, and that
Right.
goes for like a slower pace too. You don't have to be Mach 2, you know, like
Mhm.
there isn't like this minimum speed requirement. There's a minimum conduct that we want you to do. We want you to kind of ride a certain way so you're predictable. But beyond
Right.
that, you know, the track is designed to allow passing in lots of places, and passing is very specific so that it is very safe, even though it might be close and it might be like a very huge speed differential. And most track
Right.
days are broken up into different groups, you know, typically A, B, and C. A is like your, you know, your club level or your national level racers. B groups are your intermediates, and C group, you know, my C group that I run, we specifically call it the polite group. It is designed for people who are getting into track days. And we kind of say, it's like, you're going to be polite. You're going to be nice. You're going to treat this new person here, you know, like we want them to stay around in the sport. And it's worked out really, really well. We have people who stay in the C group who could very easily graduate to the B group. They're like, nah, I'm cool. I can ride. I just like being in the polite group.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Lee Sturgis asks, does Champ U supply bikes? Well, Champ U is the online,
If
but
you the track school, right? So let's say you only own an ultra classic and you want to do a track day and you want to do it like on an MT10, yeah, you can rent one of their bikes and you can ride their bikes. Yeah, absolutely.
okay, cool. Then Mark DeGrasse says, which decreasing radius turn first comes to mind and why? Temptation Corner at Calabogie near Montreal and Barber Motorsports.
Which decreasing radius first comes to mind for me? Well, it's going to be the one on East Canyon that comes over the hill and it's blind and it button hooks back into itself with a fall away corner with a cliff on the other side. That's the first one
Oh
I
my
always
God.
think about,
Jeez.
because that's the one I don't want to get wrong. There's also one on Highway 12 in Utah. And if you're not familiar with that road, it's where they filmed the Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons. It is Red Rock Cliffs with this road that goes through these impossible places. And there's 1 or 2 decreasing radius corners there that are what we would call a high consequence corner. Those come to mind before the track stuff. Track day
wow.
corners, they're easy. You're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, it's a decreasing radius corner. I treat it this way, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Right, so Simon Lai says, hi, Dave. Given a free choice, would you rather ride on track or street?
90% of the time, I would rather ride on the street. But if it was a special track, that would woo me. My true love really is
Mm.
riding in the street. Sport touring is really where we were born from. You know, like
Okay.
we did a big trip up through British Columbia, up the Sunshine Coast, where you do the ferries and you get off. Motorcycles have priority boarding, so you're the first off the ferry, which means there are
Mm.
no cars in front of you. You have the road literally all to yourself, you know, and the
Oh, wow.
sun setting and the ocean, and that's better. The track is kind of like a means to that. The track is this great way to kind of bring my skills to a level that I can ride these really crazy mountain roads very comfortably, where I can,
Mhm.
like, I'm riding a decent clip, but for me, it's very slow for me. I'm looking around. I can really enjoy it. I'm prepared for any emergency. So the one kind of feeds the other. Now, if we're going to talk about, there are a few racetracks in the world that I would give my eye teeth to ride, like Mugello in Italy, Phillip Island in
Mhm.
Australia, Assen. I think I would like to ride Assen. Those might tempt me away from a street ride, but the street is really my true love. And I see a British flag there, so I should
Yeah.
mention Silverstone. I would love to ride Silverstone. I got you, brother.
Yeah, I'm not into the whole racing thing, so all those tracks that you listed off, I have no idea.
Understandable. It's not a requirement.
But
But they're
they
like
sound
tracks
great.
steeped in history. And so like Phillip
Okay.
Island is on the ocean in Australia.
Okay.
Silverstone is an incredible track. Like, man, Formula One, Mugello, come on, it's in the heart of Tuscany. Come on, who doesn't want to ride a
Mhm.
motorcycle? Right? Come on.
Yeah. Okay, so my wife says, do you go out and find other tracks outside of your state and try to practice on those?
I do. Yeah. We usually do that in the winter. Snows here in the winter. So usually in the summer, we'll head to California. California has a bunch of tracks, and it's a great way to kind of keep your riding legs during the winter months when you can't ride as much.
Right. Yeah, out here in Ohio, I mean, we're kind of in the same situation. Winter comes, and then my bike sits in the garage. My skills diminish. Just
Yeah,
got an
we call that parked motorcycle syndrome, PMS.
yeah,
When you're suffering
PMS.
from
Yep.
PMS. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got an enclosed trailer.
Nice.
So I'm thinking, maybe once or twice in the winter, kind of sneak out a little bit and, not be as rusty.
Well, it's amazing the difference it makes for your mood too, when you can get out in the dead of winter and get some corners in and you're like, oh, this
Right.
is who I
Yeah.
am. I feel at peace again. I can deal with the guy who cuts me off in traffic because I got my Zen. I'm good again.
Yeah. Mark DeGrasse says those are two that come to mind for me. Such a challenge in sim racing.
Oh, right on. Yeah, the elevation tracks are really cool because like a lot of they'll set up a corner that you apex on the blind point of the top of a hill, which poses a bunch of problems, right? This is where track can be a great teaching tool. When you're trying to apex at the top of a hill, you're coming up, you have less weight, right? So you have less grip because you're kind of
Mhm.
hovering at the top of this corner, and then you got to still get the bike turned when you don't have this weight pushing you back down into the ground, or dealing with downhill corners, right? Like if you
Mhm.
struggle with downhill corners, find a track that has a bunch of downhill turns. It'll teach you really quickly, that relying too much on engine braking doesn't really help you navigate a downhill corner. Using the front
Right.
brake does.
Yeah, I found that I enjoy going downhill now that I know that I can use the front brake. It's a lot more enjoyable. Everybody loves going uphill, but when you got to come down, that's where it can get a little sketchy.
Yeah, in the early days of Canyon Chasers, we used to rate all of our roads. Ride it this way instead of that way because uphill is fun, downhill is scary. And now it makes no difference to me. The road's great either direction.
Right. Now, what do you say to somebody that you're trail braking? Say the road is just completely downhill at a really high slope, and are you able to stay on your brakes pretty much that whole time without overheating them? Because okay,
So, and then for you cruiser guys, right? So cruiser guys, you have like a longer wheelbase. The bike is a little bit heavier. You have more rear brake at your disposal than a sport bike does. Sport bikes are light, short wheelbase. They're really kind of tight. When they're going down those steep hills, the rear brake becomes virtually ineffective. You guys have more rear brake that you can use in those situations. And you really shouldn't worry about overheating your brakes. Modern brakes, come on, man, these brakes are designed on race bikes that are slowing down from like 230 miles an hour for a 20-mile-an-hour corner. Even your heavier bikes, your ultra classics, your road glides, stuff like that, you're unlikely to overheat your brakes. And if they do start to kind of get a little mushy, you can just pull off and let them cool down for a second. But
right,
you'll be surprised how much heat those brakes will take before it becomes a problem.
yeah. I'm sure you've rode the Tail of the Dragon before.
I haven't actually.
Oh my gosh, really?
I
Wow,
know,
okay.
I know. I never get back east. There's that big flat spot in the middle.
Yeah. You got to go to Tennessee and North Carolina and ride those roads out there.
Oh, I
It's
really want to.
absolutely
I really
beautiful.
do.
It's beautiful. Yeah. But when I was riding the Tail of the Dragon, yeah, I've done it 3 times and I'm over it. It's nice, but a little overrated. But when I ride that, I can smell my brakes and it gets me a little nervous, but everything works out.
Yeah, and like what brake pads are what, like $60-$80? Whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Like in the scheme of things, $60, $80 for brake pads, or I fall down and break my collarbone. I would rather
Yeah.
go through the brake pads,
Yeah. I mean, it's a wearable component on the motorcycle.
Yeah, we get that comment all the time on our YouTube channels, like, oh, you should never do that. You'll just burn up your brake pads. Brake pads are cheap and disposable. They do wear out, just like tires. I'm not going to ride my motorcycle because the tires might wear out. That's silly. I'm not going to not use my brakes because my brakes might wear out. No. This is what they're there for.
Yep, exactly. Well said. My wife says, yeah, Joe definitely has PMS. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Well,
wife
not right
says the same
now.
thing to me. We need to go for a ride. You're making me crazy.
Yeah. The what else we got? Yeah, my wife agrees. Tennessee has nice roads. Least surges. I agree. No disrespect. Tail is overrated. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm told there's a road nearby that nobody is on that is better. Like one of the adjacent roads to Tail the Dragon. Everyone tells me about that one.
Got Cherahalla Skyway, which is great, and then Foothills Parkway. There's just so many other great roads out there. You need to make a road trip out there.
It's on the list. It really is.
One of the other YouTubers, have you ever heard of Traveling Tall?
Yes.
He started putting on an event, Run to the Hills, and that's where they ride, is out in Tennessee. And I think it'd be pretty awesome if you made the trip out there sometime and experience those roads.
Yeah, it's good terrain, right? It's pretty. I like to go in the fall because we don't get fall colors out here in the West. Everything just turns brown and dies, and then it snows. Okay. So I would love to come out in the fall and see the fall colors.
Yeah, it's great. All right. It looks like chat is slowing down here, so I'm not going to drag this on. Dave, I really appreciate you coming on to the stream. It's absolute honor because I've been watching your videos for quite a few years now. But before I let you go, where can people find you on the internet?
You can basically just Google Canyon Chasers, one word, anywhere. It's YouTube is kind of where we're putting all of our eggs, as it were. I strive for a video every 2 weeks, but it doesn't always happen that way. And we have a podcast and the website, Instagram. I'm on Twitter now, not Twitter, TikTok. I probably won't stay there for very long. TikTok is a hard place. I don't know. I think I'm a little too old for the TikToking. It's the little dance moves. Yeah, I'm everywhere. But yeah, YouTube is where I put most of my energy because I like the interaction with the audience on YouTube better, right? And that's a big part of why I do this.
Yeah, TikTok's a whole different breed. Once you thought some YouTube comments were bad, post to TikTok and then let the comments roll in. It's fantastic. Oh, I have one last question for you. Okay. Do you think it's okay to mount a motorcycle on the high side?
Sure. Why not? Right?
Okay.
Is that not a thing? Like I'm a short guy. I'm not very tall. Sometimes depending on the slope, that's my only option. Is to go over the high side. No. I'm not really into. So I was in the military, and when you're in the Army, they make you take all these like crazy personality tests, and they made me take this one, and it came back and it said not impressed with tradition, and that was like a big check against me. He's not impressed with tradition, but like the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, I'm really not impressed with tradition. You don't need to get on the bike from this side or that side, like. I usually get on the low side because the kickstand's there, but who doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Well, I posted a YouTube short showing people how to get on to the high side of the bike. I got completely ripped a new one for doing that.
It's okay. So, I made a short that was a spoof on that Sarah McLachlan commercial about the dogs, like rescuing dogs. And it was save the levers, right? It was like save the levers. And it was basically like doing the foot ready U-turns, like every day, brake levers and shift levers are needlessly broken. I thought it was kind of funny. I thought it was a cute way to kind of like just put your foot out. Same thing. Yep. I got lambasted for that. Yep. Like, it's like, oh, I can't believe you're a coach and you would ever tell you.
Yep. People are so sensitive nowadays. Before, and you guys are making me do this longer. I want to thank Jimmy the Bull. ended up sending a super chat. Here's your sound effect.
Super chats.
Ooh, that's impressive.
I made that myself too. That's actually my voice and
Super chat.
little audio edit.
Right on.
Jimmy the Bull, definitely appreciate the super chat. And yes, it definitely was a great interview. And just GQ, he just showed up. So go ahead and watch the replay. Andrew Schultz says, thank you, Joe and Canyon Chasers. My pleasure. And Dave, again, thanks for coming on. Absolute pleasure. And we'll see you next time, brother.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for inviting me. This was a lot of fun to talk about these things. We
Yeah,
can talk
and-
about these sensitive issues without like having to hate each other at the end, right? We can talk about
Right, yeah,
going slow
exactly.
or cruisers versus sport bikes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure I'll maybe have you on again. So.
Right on, yeah. And wave to the scooters, right? Come on.
Okay.
We're on two wheels too. It might be me on that scooter. And you're like, I'm not
No,
gonna
I
wave to
do.
that guy. Freaking scooter. Take the wave back.
All right, Dave. I appreciate it, man.
All right, guys. Cheers.
All right, guys. That was it. The Dave from Canyon Chasers. Great interview. I'll be chopping this up and putting it into the podcast. And I just want to give a shout out to Break Free again for being the sponsor of this live stream. Their link is down in the description. And make sure you use that code to get the 10% off if you order one. They did just restock. So make sure you go in and get you one. Fantastic. But that's going to do it, guys. As always, this is Jogo with Jogo Motorcycle Adventures. And until next time, ride on.